Before I speak on this topic, I just want to say that this issue it's bigger than Vic Mensa. It's bigger than DJ Akademiks, and it's bigger than Chicago. Pay close attention to what Vic Mensa said. If you can look past the threats and all that stuff that people seem to be obsessed with, pay close attention to what he said when he mentioned this is what people do outside of our culture, and you're doing the same. Now, what that implies is that this is a systemic issue. Everything that I've seen over the past 24 hours where I've heard people comment on this, which is making me more, just more heated than anything else, is just when people say just moronic shit like, dude, he's doing the news. He's doing the news just like people do on CNN. He's doing the news just like... If we want to put our journalistic hats on, then we will say that the advantage that CNN has over DJ Akademiks or anybody else who self-publishes like myself is they have resources. They have reach. They can grab just about anybody they want. But what hinders them, and the advantage that the self-publisher has, is the independence, the ability to be flexible, and to do anything with your brand or with your platform because you're not beholden to advertisers. CNN, NBC, they have responsibilities to their advertisers, so they can't stir shit up too much. So if we use somebody like Don Lemon, for example, if he wants to touch on social issues, Don Lemon can't just pluck a community leader, you know, from whatever the fuck he wants and say, and gives this person a platform and decides to speak to them live on CNN because John Lennon, because Don Lemon doesn't own CNN. Okay. DJ Akademiks owns his platform. So if it was a journalistic thing where he was trying to bring light to a horrible situation in Chicago, then you could obviously reach out to community leaders and you can obviously speak to people who are who are at ground zero and they know exactly what's going on in those cities, and they can speak to you on your platform and you can really shed some positive light. But that's not what happened. That wasn't the case. See, but I'm not here to really speak on that matter because I think most intelligent people can understand and they know what's wrong about what's even worse, in my opinion, as a colored person to come in and speak about the theater of black people just eating each other. I mean, that's even worse. If this was somebody like DJ Vlad or somebody like Jordan Tower that was creating these videos, which, you know, most people would say that this is basically what DJ Vlad does because he instigates certain situations and he makes them worse. But if it was somebody that was white, we would call them a culture vulture and we would say that they are contaminating the culture. But what we do instead is we put profits ahead of everything else. So if it's a colored person that's profiting off of this media, this form of news, quote unquote, we say it's okay because at the very least, the money is going into black pockets. In my mind, that's no different than saying, well, there's a white slave ship and there's a black slave ship. Do business with the black slave ship because at the end of the day, that black slave ship will employ other black people. I think that's totally twisted, and we're definitely putting profit in front of our integrity, and that is always where we make our biggest mistakes. Because some people don't learn the concept of not all money is good money. Not all money is good money. If you come home with a wad of cash and you hand it off to your mother, but your mother knows that what you did for that money was morally wrong, ethically wrong, just wrong, it's different than if you would have gone and earned it honestly in a 9-to-5 or just a business that you grew. So we put that ahead of integrity. We put that ahead of lives. This is a systemic issue that we're discussing. The bigger problem here to me isn't the fact that DJ Akademiks talks about these things. It's that who he shares it with. He shares it with a young audience who can't see the idea. Here's an example of the problem. I saw a video of two young guys that they were, they were having a conversation about this everyday struggle argument. And one of these kids was completely obsessed about the idea of, if that were me, I would have killed Vic Mensa. You understand the idea of seeing another black man on screen act aggressively, and you just by default are infuriated by it. I mean, you just want to get all over him, and you want to put yourself in academic shoes, and you want to say, if that were me, I would have. That is the same exact energy that DJ Akademiks would comment on. So you really, when you take a macro step back and you take a look at the whole situation, you realize that that frame of thinking is where the problem lies. But as I said, it's a systemic issue, and it's a very complex thing to go into, because we're really talking about people's minds. We're talking about the way people think. We're not talking about necessarily their actions. That's not really important. The other moronic thing that I heard is I heard, oh, get mad at the people that are doing it. That totally goes away from the point that's being made by Vic Mensa. It totally strays away from that's not the point of this whole scenario. The point is that the idea of reporting something like this, I mean, it's not really reporting. Right? Like it's not really reporting. Reporting is giving people details. You don't lampoon people when you report. There is no mixture, or at least in my mind, obviously, because all of this is my opinion, there is no way that you can absolve yourself of wrongdoing if you are commenting on something that is negative, whether you want to consider yourself entertaining or humorous or a satirist. There is no way that you absolve yourself of any guilt of that situation, because you end the content or the video by telling people, but hey, don't you guys go doing this. This is negative. This, and you're profiting from this. You're profiting from this. You're profiting from the commentary of heaving just this red hot black lives just going at each other like two bulls in a fucking china shop, and you're just presiding over it and just watching them and just watching the situation so closely and waiting for somebody to be killed so you can label people certain names. I mean, it's very problematic. And by the way, all as commentators, we pretty much let you know where we stand because we don't comment about this. So in reality, every commentator is putting in their 2 cents, whether they comment on this or not. For the simple fact that if you look at their pages and you see what they speak about, then that pretty much lets you know what side of the coin that they're on. If you go on somebody's page and it's mostly stuff about people, getting shot and people getting robbed and all these things happening, then you could pretty much say they could either side to Akademiks or maybe be in the center. But for the most part, if you go on somebody's YouTube channel and you see that they mostly speak about music and they don't really, they don't talk about people's deaths, then obviously they side with Vic. The news does its job to do exactly what's done when we talk about stuff like that. There's a reason why World Star Hip Hop grew to prominence at one point. You had great websites like OK Player. You had Hip Hop DX, who, they're still doing what they do, but they did it in a way that had integrity. They did it in a way that had care for the culture that they were commenting on. When World Star came, then all of a sudden the game changed, because World Star took the word hip hop and they put it on the website, and now all the bullshit that happened on World Star was now considered quote unquote hip hop. Ladies and gentlemen, this is a principle in media that's always been prevalent. If it bleeds, it leads. Period. Death is always going to be more appealing to people. Violence is always going to be more appealing to people. This is the reason why when you watch the news, towards the end, they say, oh, and by the way, a firefighter saved a kitten out of a tree. They just sort of just mention it just in passing. It's not really the emphasis of the programming. So there's no mystery why Akademiks did what he did, because he knew it would obviously make him popular. Though the failure here by Akademiks and by his fan base is to understand that they are unaware that they are participating in a act that has it's always been the goal. It's always been the goal to portray young blacks that way. It's always been the goal. But it's a lot easier when you, as a colored person, do their work for them. Get behind the mic and call people coons. Get behind the mic and call people ignorant. People, sick people. There are certain areas in this. And listen, I live in New York City. I have not lived in other states all over the U.S. But it's common knowledge, basically, to understand that there are certain neighborhoods in this country where it's a property value issue. It's an educational issue. There's so many things that are toppled on top of one another that it's just, you can't encapsulate it in a 7-minute video by describing who did what and why they did it. Because you're commenting on the result of years and years and years of just the sickness, and to talk about it, to somehow pretend like there's some, there's some form of journalism being done, I think is just disingenuous. I think I would have appreciated a lot more if Akademiks just would have said, look, dude, I'm sorry that you didn't like the material. I don't do stuff like that anymore. I've matured. I know that it's wrong. I tried to sort of put my own spin on it, but maybe in the end it was just a bit too much. I would have respected that a lot more, because that's the case. I think Akademiks is smart enough to at least realize that there's nothing noble. There was nothing noble in that. And in fact, I looked up that because I never found Akademiks prior to his regular channel. Now, I didn't see any of that Chirac stuff. I didn't know about that. So I went back and I saw that video, the one that he mentioned, the one that Vic Mensa mentioned about his friend that gotten shot. And I saw what he meant. I mean, I couldn't really, you couldn't really disagree with what Vic had to say. I don't know if that's just one individual video that he plucked out, that Akademiks was just on his worst behavior. But whatever the case is, it's definitely nothing that, I as a commentator would ever speak on, ever. Because, I mean, that's such a sensitive issue. I could never fix myself to speak on things like that, because I've told you guys before, when rap beefs happen and, records are going, back and forth, and I'll talk about that. But when it turns into something else, when it starts turning into Snapchats and Instagram posts of, hey, you a fuckboy, nigga, I'ma pull up when I don't know what the fuck I'm talking about anymore. And that's when you don't hear from me, because that's not rap news anymore. That's just street shit. That's stuff that we've all experienced, stuff that I live around, stuff that you live around, that is very serious to the people who are experiencing it. And it doesn't, and to pull away and to comment on something, 50 miles that way, doesn't change the fact that these are people, and these are people's stories with their own, with their own paths of how they got to where they got to, and to comment on death and all that stuff is just very strange. So again, a systemic issue, which I think it's too, I couldn't even be the best person to describe it to you. I couldn't even be the person to talk to you about the system of white supremacy. That's such a complex issue that I would leave to people that are much more educated on the topic than I am. But pay attention to to things like Charlemagne the God, for example, when he brings on Minister Farrakhan, when he brings on Boyce Watkins on The Breakfast Club. Charlemagne has gotten to the point where he can pull these conscious people to speak about these topics that he doesn't really, he's not well versed in, maybe, or maybe he can't articulate it well, but he brings them on his platform so they can talk about it. That's because he has enough power in that medium to do that. Now, just remember that the next time you watch that video and you agree somehow with the idea of, well, this is just the news. And remember that that power has always been given to the self-publisher. The self-publisher always has the power to do whatever it is that he or she wants to do, because we are not beholden to advertisers. So if I wanted to comment about the deaths in whatever the fuck city it is, and if my following is big enough, then that easily says that I can grab people from these communities and I can have conversations and we can really get to something if that was my intention. But if I'm just lampooning people and then at the end just vaguely saying, but we shouldn't do this, right, guys? It's just irresponsible and it's disingenuous not to admit that it's wrong.